Good morning, everybody. My name is Hirji from Durham College. I work at the AI Hub, and this is our informal chats, which we call the AI and Ajax series. These are small little sessions that we hold for the community, where we talk about different facets of AI and how you can get involved in it. I see a couple of people in the chat just saying good morning. Thank you very much. Good morning to you too. This session is being recorded, as we always do with our AI and Ajax series. Once we're done the session, we always post it up on our YouTube channels for those people that want to access it. Today, we're going to be spending the next 35 to 40 minutes discussing the financial elements of an AI project. We're going to be talking about two things. Firstly, we'll look at the funding components, which is to suggest that there is funding available for you from a variety of public sector sources that you can use to fund your projects. However, there are certain criteria that go along with that funding, and we'll walk you through how you can access that. Again, as I mentioned, this is an informal session. These are small little groups that we do. Myself, alongside Christopher Gillis, my lead in applied research and business development, somebody who's mentored me through my time at Durham College, and folks like Richie and Mauricio are all here, and you can tweet at us, email us if you have any more questions. We'll then go into what you need to be thinking about once you've got a little bit of funding, or if you're self-funding, what are the costs you need to keep in mind in order to not just produce for function, but to produce an AI product for scale and maintenance. One of the biggest reasons, 9 times out of 10, that I've seen an AI project fail is because it does what it has to do in controlled circumstances, and then when it has to be maintained and supported, these elements fall apart. So we're going to have an exciting 30 minutes, and I'll be discussing this with Chandra, my colleague from a while ago, but he is a good friend of mine, also happens to live in the same neighborhood as I do. He is a lead in data architecture at Scotiabank, and he'll be focusing on some of the costs and the architecture that goes around with building an AI project. But before we begin, none of this would be possible without the awesome support from the town of Ajax, and I'm going to turn it over to Mayor Shaun Collier just to make some opening remarks. Mayor Collier?
Thanks, Ellie. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to AI for Ajax. This is the second of 4 AI for Ajax sessions planned for 2020 by our Economic Development Office in partnership with Durham College and the AI Hub. In fact, these sessions are just one part of a larger series of tech events we have planned for the rest of 2020. Events intended to help Ajax businesses recover and thrive from the impact of COVID-19. Only a few years ago, due to the cost and complexity, AI was a technology only available to the largest companies in the world. Today, companies of all sizes and in all sectors are rapidly implementing artificial intelligence in their business models. AI solutions are being used to increase efficiency and help businesses adapt to deliver more of their services online. According to Forbes, more than 80% of business owners say that AI will enable them to obtain a competitive advantage, and they plan to make AI a strategic priority for their businesses. Now's the time to look at incorporating AI solutions into your business model to help take it to the next level. The question we're going to ask you today is, what funding opportunities are available to help your AI project get off the ground right now? Thank you again. I'll turn it back over to Ali for our guest speakers.
Okay. Mayor Collier, thank you very much. And Andrew Pore, Don Terry as well, thank you so much for all of your support and making sure that we can keep these sessions going on. So I'm going to jump right into it. As I mentioned, the time right now is 9:15, and we'll go till about 9:45. We're going to be throwing a lot of information your way. But the whole point is that you can take from this the cost models that you need and what funding you can access to move forward. Chandra, before I begin, I just wanted to turn it over to you just for 30 seconds if you want to introduce yourself and tell the audience what is it that you do at Scotiabank.
Thanks, Ali. Good morning, everyone. I'm Chandra. I'm working as a data architect and solution architect for Scotiabank. And we have doing a lot of initiatives in the form of cloud infrastructure and cloud build-up. We are using that one for setting up our AI activities and a lot of ML activities driven for the bank. And we are also maintaining a lot of clusters, which is more intensive in performing a lot of ML activities to drive the customers in a better way and support the customers in a better way. And due to the unfortunate situation of COVID-19, we have come up with a lot of solutions and interim solutions for to support the customers. The government is providing a lot of initiatives and providing support to a lot of businesses and also to a lot of consumers. So we come up with the solutions and to in the fast-paced environment to support the customers. And we are building this one, using a lot of cloud infrastructure and the big data platforms that we have, and bring up the new models so that we understand how the customer behavior is towards during this crisis and how we can support them.
Fantastic. So all of you would have heard a whole bunch of key words that Chandra threw out there. The words like ML, AI, looking at forecasting, understanding customer trends, so on and so forth. The key thing to remember, and I'll ask my team to put up the slides now, is that when you're working in an AI project, keep the 3 C's in mind. The first is compute. The second is cloud. The third is connectivity. Let me repeat that again. Compute, cloud, and connectivity. These are the core areas where you are going to see some of the major costs accrue in any AI project. Now, as all of you know, very, very quickly, at the AI Hub, what we do with companies is, let's say you have a company and let's say, for example, you're in the business of, I don't know, manufacturing these little giveaways, okay? That's my favorite character from Family Guy. After Homer Simpson, a very important element of my life. So if you were manufacturing those little giveaways, okay, and you came to me and said, Ali, I'm looking for a way in which I can analyze when people are buying more of this toy versus the other, you would come to the AI Hub and I would say, look, you know what? We can look at all of the information that you have, pair it up with some other information and stats that we have, and give you a recommendation system, kind of like Netflix, that says, in September, you've been selling 10% of this toy, 20% of the other, but everything else is at 70%. This is the one that you want to be focusing on. And these are the trends over a period of time. Then you come to me and say, Ali, I also want to import this into a website of some sort. I want to incorporate this into an app of some sort. Our team is able to do all of those elements that you need to create the product that you want, to create the end user experience that you want, and to deliver it to you so that you can scale and move it further. So you have access to technical expertise. So you have folks like Chris Gillis, you have folks like Abhilash Maracharla, Chandra might be joining us for a couple of projects. They are our principal investigators. They will sort of be your port of call for everything that you do. You then have access to state-of-the-art facilities. Right now, everything is remote. So you need high levels of computing, you need servers, you need different hardware in order to run these projects. You get access to those kind of equipments on the cloud or on-prem through the AI Hub. And then, of course, along with the principal investigator, let's say Chandra was leading one of our projects, he would have 2 or 3 students that would be supporting him. Those students ultimately then work on these projects and are the beneficiaries of the funding that we bring in. I hope that made sense. A very simple process where you can come to the hub and you can scale whatever prototype it is that you wanted to build. Team, can I go to the next slide? Now, first, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the public sector funds that are available. Now, Chandra made a very important point, is that the government is opening up various initiatives where you can access different funding in order to build your projects. The fundamental rule that you need to understand is that this is not an exhaustive list. This is an example of 3 funding bodies that we currently work with, but there are others, okay? There is MyTax, for example, that support internships. Take some time to do some research on what are the public sector funding pools that are available. A good starting point would definitely be the Ontario Centres of Excellence. So at the AI Hub to date, we've done approximately, and Hirji can keep me true to this, over the last 2 years, we've done approximately 50 to 58 different projects with unique companies. Mitchell & Whale Insurance Brokers out in Whitby. We've worked with Durham Recruiting here in Oshawa. We are also doing some work with the Ajax Pickering Board of Trade. We've done work with Lifelong Group of Companies that has a presence in Ajax, Pickering, and Oshawa. St. Mary's Cement, Lakeridge Hospital. We work with a lot of different companies in the region, but of course, it doesn't just have to be companies in the region. Most of the funding pools will allow you to access funding from anywhere in Canada, although Ontario Centres of Excellence will be specific to the province of Ontario. A good starting point is to go and see what programs the OCE has. Now, one fundamental rule of thumb, if you want to access any of the funding that is available, in most cases, there are some exceptions that prove the rule. There is something called the 2+2 rule, which is your incorporation or your business has to have been in operation for 2 years and has to have at least 2 full-time staff. Case in point, as Chris Gillis always says, you need to show that you are a legitimate business, and you need to show that you've got some ability to scale and take to market whatever it is that you're looking for funding for. Similarly, I'll spend another 2 more minutes talking about some tools available from OCE. For example, last year, leading into this year, we had something called a voucher fund. It was called the CVTA. I forget what the acronym is, but essentially the college was now a recipient of X amount of dollars. And we had the ability to now do 21 projects wherein a company would have to put in $2,000. We would put in $10,000 from OCE funding. And we then built our teams where we hired a principal investigator and we then hired 2 or 3 students across a period of 6 to 8 weeks to deliver on whatever the prototype is. Remember though, none of that money will go into your account. The whole management of the fund will sit within the college environment. Now, there are opportunities where sometimes you may be able to go directly to these funding bodies. That would be separate to the college itself. You are welcome to speak to OCE. They have various representatives. I know in the Durham region, folks like Dan Ruby, Cameron, etc., are all good resources for you to reach out to. I'll spend another 2 more minutes talking about the other 2 funds that are there. The other 2 funds, and this is not an exhaustive list, again, work in a very similar fashion. But if I pick on one in this case, let's take the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council. The AI Hub, as many of you, if you've researched us a little bit, have about 2.5-ish million over the next another 3 years. We've spent a bit of that, but we have a sizable pool of money that we can use for projects for the next 3 years. In most cases, the rule of thumb is that you would put in 30% of the cash requirements, we would put in the remainder 70%. That rule can change sometimes depending on where the financial climates are at. The pandemic may impact us in one way or the other, so don't necessarily take that to the bank. Do come and talk to us about what the actual cash matching value is. Again, with NSERC, it's the 2+2 rule. 2 full-time staff, 2 years of incorporation, and the ability to show that your company has a legitimate go-to-market and a movement forward kind of plan. You need to have a solid business case. All of these funds that are out there, whether you look at MyTax, whether you look at NRC, you look at the IRAP program, that's the NRC standing for the National Research Council, you will notice that you will get X amount of dollars towards the project and you will have to put in some cash. In some cases, so recently a couple of funds have come under a community grant fund. The companies don't necessarily have to put in any money. You get the money into the project directly. No money goes into the company pool. It goes directly to the institution, the academic institution, and they deliver and run on the project. So I'll close by saying this. Do your research for what's out there. This is not just specific to AI. This can apply to autonomous vehicles, smart mobility, green technology projects, cybersecurity projects. Talk to these institutions. Come to Durham College, reach out to Chris Gillis, reach out to myself, reach out to Vibha Tyagi, and we can help you navigate what these funding pools are. Research them for yourself, talk to the folks, and then you can see how best to partner with the college. Or if you've got to go direct and that's a resource available to you, by all means, you may go ahead. There, as Chandra said, there is funding that's available. You just have to go and look for it. Now, we're going to move into now a little bit of more details into what you need to be thinking about if you're going to be doing an AI project. Next slide, please. Now, Chandra, this is where I want to have a conversation with you about the 4 or rather the 3 areas of cost that any AI project needs to consider. Let's start out, and I want you to just let these slides sort of settle in a little bit. There's not much that I want you to focus on, but let's start off with the first element over here, which is delivery. Delivery, in my opinion, of the 3 C's that I was suggesting, refers to compute. An AI project relies entirely on data. Many of you would have heard of what we call big data sets, which simply mean lots and lots and lots of data. Lots and lots of data spread across lots and lots and lots of different environments in lots and lots of different formats. Think about Facebook, for example. Let's say if somebody looks at my Facebook profile, the data sets that I have are text-based, they are videos, there are pictures, there are moving images, there are GIFs, there's a whole bunch of data sets that exist. Those data sets need to be classified. Those data sets need to be put together in some sort of a reasonable ecosystem. Think of an Excel sheet, right? When you go on an Excel sheet, you create a couple of tabs, you create a couple of cells. For example, if you're doing an expense sheet, you put the income, you track what it was, you put the value, you compare that with the expenses, you run a formula. But when you've got millions and millions of multiple disparate data types, you need to then look at something more complex. SQL databases, Mongo databases, relational databases. All of this refers to compute. Lots of data requires lots of memory and processing power in order to go through. So when you are a small to medium business, the first question you want to ask yourself is, if I have all of this data and it has to be useful to me, I need to store this somewhere and I need to have a server environment that can compute through this data. Chandra, let me ask you, and if you can very briefly talk to me about what are some of the challenges when you are choosing a server environment or a compute environment to process your data?
Yeah, Ali. There are two things. First, you need to consider. One is, what kind of a data format we have. Whether you are generating a structured data, like what you can put it into a database or a server, and whether you are generating some unstructured data, like you are getting image points or video clippings, or you are getting scan reports or something like that, then you have to store it in a different way. So the major problem comes with the storage is, for any AI project, we just don't need data. We need huge amount of data for our AI models to work. So in order for the models to work, we need to keep pumping the data in at later stages of the time. Like, maybe initially, what is the data that you have? You might be, pulling it to the AI models, and later point of time, based upon your hypothesis and all, etc. To support those, you need to be constantly, supporting, providing the data, maybe in a real-time model or something like that. So based on depending upon, how your company is, organization is working, and what kind of a problem you are trying to solve, depending upon that one, it depends, like, what kind of storage format and the storage service you need. The other main important is, as your AI model is progressing, the data is more is required, and your infrastructure needs to be in a position to be scalable at a faster pace to accommodate all the data that is coming. And at the same point of time, your infrastructure should be able to accommodate the computability of the models. Yeah. So you need a lot of servers with a lot of GPUs.
Yeah. Now, again, quite a few important acronyms there, but I need everyone to understand this, is that when you're working at the hub, we have our data centers. We have our, what we call our IBM Beast machine that sits in our environment. Again, for those of you who may not be familiar with what's a server and think of it as, a computer that can run your particular application that you need. Now, when you're looking at a server environment, that comes at a cost. Some companies will go down the line of saying, we're going to maintain our own server. And that happens. Medical companies, for example. I mean, we're working with Brantford Pediatrics all the way in Brantford, and their team, has made a decision to continue on-prem. Now, they've done a hybrid environment, but when I say on-prem, they have servers within their office environment. Now, that's a decision that they've taken. The first thing you need to think about is whatever the lovely team at the AI Hub comes up with, and whatever magic they give me, I need to take it from them, and it has to live somewhere. That somewhere, that compute, that server can be in-house or on the cloud. Now, you've heard me say this before, never trust a computer that you cannot throw out of the window. I have reservations about cloud when it comes to auditing and compliance, but of course, it's a question of economies of scale. If you run a server in-house, which will run the application, digest all of the data, and stay connected 24/7, hopefully to the internet, typically the cost of managing that server for a small to medium, but usually a medium business, can be anything from $900 all the way up to $1,200 per month. Why do I say that? Because there's the one-off hardware costs, but then there's the maintenance costs that come with it. There's a support cost that come with it. The total cost of ownership in terms of power, depending on how many servers you're running, depending on how much maintenance you're doing, and depending on the connectivity. Add on to that, that maintaining that server is a technical skill in and of itself. This isn't something that you just plug and play and it takes care of itself. So the first thing I ask everybody to think about is when you're looking to fund an AI project, your business is doing well, you're trying to layer on AI, think about the computing element. Now you could shift onto the cloud and you could do a dedicated environment on AWS, on HostGator, whatever have you. Those could cost you about $300 a month. The other issue still remains. There is a technical cost to maintaining that. So if you are a small to medium business in Ajax and you have never had to manage your own environment, never had to manage your own application, the minute you work with the AI Hub and we hand over something to you, you need to determine how you want that application to live from a computing standpoint. I'll add one more point here. Many companies don't, especially small to medium businesses, will have one IT person who makes sure that the website is up, who makes sure that some basic things, email servers are working, etc. Many of them access services called managed IT services. The first thing you want to do, as Chandra will tell you, is talk to your managed IT team and ask them, if I run this application, is it going to charge me anything more? How will you be able to support this for me? Chandra, I want to turn it back to you for a second.
Yeah.
When it comes to cloud versus on-prem, do you have any comments to throw in terms of the cost benefits of going onto the cloud?
Yeah, definitely. There is a huge cost difference between on-prem and cloud. So for on-prem servers, to set up, to maintain them, so the initial cost of setting up itself is very high compared to cloud. So cloud comes with already set up environment for you. So it is kind of a shopping cart. You go and you buy whatever kind of a service you need, what kind of computing you need, how much level of storage you need. All of those things, you can go to a kind of a shopping cart and you can shop all the things that you need, and then you can put it them. And there are a lot of software and AI capability software is also available within a lot of cloud providers, and you can shop them with a very minimal cost on a monthly basis, or it can be calculated at how much you are usage basis. So based upon, if you are not using too much of the data or too much of memory, then you will be charged only according to how much you are using. So when you look at how much cost you end up paying and maintaining for an on-prem services, and when you move to the cloud, it is very minimal compared to that one, I'll say.
Yeah, absolutely. And everybody would remember is that I started off by saying that the first part is compute, and then I talked about cloud and then connectivity. I very strategically decided to jump into cloud now, but before I unpack that a little bit more, I do want to throw in a very quick 2 rupees and summarize what the essence is then about compute. When we're talking compute, you now understand as a small to medium business. AI, and I've said this in other AI and Ajax series, so I'm not going to repeat this. Data is the fuel. If for AI to be the rocket, data is the fuel, okay? You have lots and lots and lots of data. I see a couple of new faces, so I'll take 10 seconds to summarize this. AI is quite simply the process where you don't tell a computer what to do. The computer sees lots and lots and lots of data and predicts what's next. Kind of like Netflix. Netflix observes that all Ali watches all day is Bollywood and cricket. It knows that the next recommendation for him should be something related to Bollywood and cricket. It looks at patterns. It ingests data the way humans do, but it takes lots and lots and lots of data. With that data, it then has to compute that data. So storage and compute, or if you just call it compute, storage and processing power. These servers have to store the data, then they have to process them. And what do we mean by process them? That's the AI algorithms that come in. That's the AI technicalities that come in. The machine learning, the ML algorithms that Chandra was referring to. That too comes at a cost. So when you ultimately get your little prototype ready from the AI Hub and it's functional, besides thinking about how am I going to store this data, you have to think about how am I going to process this data. And that technical skills around AI algorithms require somebody who's proficient in Python, may require somebody who's proficient in different computing clusters that Chandra was talking about, may require somebody who's aware of different algorithms like, I don't know, Facebook Profit as an example, or somebody who's familiar with computer visioning, the technologies that we use for facial recognition. All of this comes at a cost. The average cost for even a junior AI practitioner is anywhere per hour between $55 to $65 per hour. It is not the most easiest environment in which to find skills for. Remember, you will have to go out into the market. You will have to design and refine what is it that you need to maintain a particular environment. All of this comes at a cost. Okay? Now, the reason that I'm insisting on understanding the compute element is because that is the core infrastructure that you need. Once you have the core built out, once you have the ability not just to build something for function, but you've got maintenance and scalability in mind, you then know what your monthly costs are going to be at. I'll give you an example, and I haven't put up the numbers just because I'm under an NDA, but I will tell you this. We recently built an application for lifelong group of companies. I estimated that on a month, and this was doing a real estate prediction system as well as a mortgage affordability recommendation system. I estimated that it was going to cost them, because they decided to hire a person in-house, it was going to cost them close to approximately $7,500 a month to maintain that particular application. These things are not cheap. Everybody knows me, I get super excited when I talk about AI, but I will tell you something, it is not for everybody. And there are many stop-start initiatives. I am not somebody that goes chasing after the waves. Rather let the sea come to you and understand it properly before you jump into it. I know of at least 5 individuals in Ajax who we went through a whole process and in the end said, you know what, this is not for you. And that's fine. Maybe the AI technologies don't. Maybe you need to be going into another technology. Maybe you're fine. People just want to buy your fries and they're coming to your store and they love your fries. Keep it that way. You want to innovate? I don't know, make some other type of fries. But AI is probably not for you. Okay? Remember the total cost of ownership. That's compute. I'll take another 7 minutes and then we'll summarize the other 2 areas as well. I recognize this is intense. There's a lot of information, but the point of this is that you spend some time to then reach out to us and then we can help you. One thing Ajax will tell you about my team, 24/7, we're open. Send us a tweet, message us on Instagram. We will respond to you and book a time. Now, let's go on to the cloud piece of this. Now, Chandra brought up an important point about cloud having a lot of plug and play, ready to use features. Cloud having some AI algorithms that you can use right away. But as Chandra will tell you, and I'll give him the floor for a minute, picking the cloud environment is very, very tricky. So Chandra, a lot of people say, oh, I'll just do this on AWS or I'll do it on Microsoft Azure. Is it as simple as that, or are there other choices that people can look at?
Yeah, Ali. So one of the things is, right, when somebody wanted to move to the cloud, they have to consider audit and compliance and the security concerns. So because when you are taking some secure data, personal information data and all, so you should be liable for the data. And when you are taking to the cloud, you need to make sure that you are compliant to all the regulations of Canada. That is the main important thing that you need to consider. So the other point is usually going up only for one cloud, like if your project or if your company is working on a real time and you want your application to be continuously running and there should not be any downtime in those cases, in those cases, it is better not to stick with one cloud always. It is better to be on a hybrid cloud. Maybe you can have some of your on-prem servers running, and you are migrating, and you are performing your lot of AI intensive activities on cloud, because that is very cost effective to do and less maintenance too. And it is better to have another backup cloud. If you are working on AWS, have your data replicated or stored in GCP or Azure. So like that, you have to choose your system that, what kind of work you are doing and where is it's most cost effective, and how can you secure your data. So you need to have a backup of at any other location.
And that's
So
exactly why, I asked Chandra to jump on this, is because of that key word there called backup, hybrid, and multiple clouds. Often what people think, look, and I know all of you have seen this spread across social media, that what's the cloud? It's nothing but somebody else's computer. And that's exactly what it is, that you are accessing or you're renting for a period of time through the transportation of the internet. That cloud environment hosts many things. Besides hosting the compute architecture, the storage, the memory, the processing, it hosts algorithms. It hosts credentials of your users. It hosts a lot of important historical data that you might require. It hosts a lot of authentication information about your particular business. Let me give you an example. Many of you would have seen me at the Cyber Exchange Power Hour last week with Bill Harmer, one of the world's leading chief information security officers, and currently the CISO for Secure Auth. I'm sure many of you folks have probably not realized, and I'm making an assumption here because I know I'm dealing with subject matter experts in various businesses, not necessarily in security and AI. So I do apologize if I've made some assumptions here. But very few people realize that when it comes to security, everything now is all about the login and authentication. Yes, people coming into your system is important. You want to track them, but how they log into your system, how they get authenticated into your system is a fundamental perimeter of security. And when you have things hosted into the cloud, you don't really know how somebody's getting into your system. So let's say, for example, you're building a medical health application. Some of you would have heard of the application called Connects Health. Connects Health gives you access to, and Chandra is on their board as well, it gives you access to PSWs, okay? Like in an Uber-like facility, allows you to order your medications from a pharmacy online and the pharmacy delivers it to your home, allows you to book virtual mental health care services. If you're going to run this whole business on the cloud, where is the front door through which a person comes in and you can see who they are and say, yep, this is the person who booked that service. This looks like an Ali. Ali booked a service to meet with the PSW. Now the PSW can meet with Ali. That is all happening in a back end that you're not seeing. This may not necessarily be an AI conversation, but it's a reality of tech conversation. When you are online and you're delivering services there, you need to know who is accessing it. You need to know how the cloud is authenticating things, amongst many other things. Chandra also brought up the fact of rules in Canada, HIPAA compliance as an example. There are other compliance standards that you need to look at, such as PCI DSS compliance. Chandra, any other compliance?
KYC, know your customer for the
Know
banking.
your customer. Absolutely. There are so many compliance standards that you need to follow. How does your cloud actually follow those standards? See, it's very easy for you to say, the government requires me to put a lock on my front door. I put a lock on my front door. Great. How do you know that your cloud environment's doing that? That comes at a cost as well, because that is a technical skill in and of itself. There is a hard requirement. You might have to look at auditors. You might have to look at a specialized skill set in order to verify that your cloud is working the way it should work and following the correct parameters that are expected of you, not just of Canadian rules, but even of the funding agency that you use in order to build your prototype. Anytime you fall apart or you miss any of those requirements and you're audited, you could be flagged for that. So cloud is one of the fundamental areas you need to look at. From a cost perspective, whether it is doing, intermediary, you're doing audits on your system, or whether it's having somebody who is actually there, making sure that on a daily basis things are happening the way they need to be happening, you're looking at an additional, if you're looking at over a month, I've seen averages with companies today of anything that as low as $1,500 a month, all the way up to even $8,000 a month for small to medium businesses. Really depends on the volume and the frequency of what you are doing. The other part of cloud is you need to understand, and I'll have Chandra talk about this as well, is that you need to know how many users are going to be using your system. how many times somebody will be logging into your application, how many times are you going to be interfacing with your customers. Chandra, can you talk a little bit about volume of users and the cloud?
Yeah, sure, Ali. So this is a very good thing, and it is a great advantage for the cloud, and it is a selling point for the cloud distributors that they are saying, because now you have built your application and your application is is ready, and you have put in for the outside, and you are having a little bit of small customers now. All of a sudden, say suppose because of the COVID-19 pandemic, you are supporting certain like Connect Health. There is a huge demand for the pharmacists to deliver medicines to a lot of the patients, and they are accessing your application and requesting the medicines and all, etc. Right? There is a huge demand. So when you have an on-prem server or something like that, you don't have that scalability to accommodate the huge spike in number of customers accessing your application. But in case of cloud has a scalability setup. As soon as your volume is increasing, cloud has the capability to scale up to the demand and satisfy the demand with scaling up the infrastructure on behind without even any manual intervention. It will do it by itself. And on the other point, what I wanted to add is, say suppose you have built your application in Toronto, but your customer base is not only in Toronto, but it is there in North America, in Vancouver, and maybe in Europe. If you have like that, then you don't need to have your servers located only at your location, and your servers can be located in all different locations when you are in cloud, and they will help the customers access your application from their points, and you can collect the data elements and data points from different locations and store at their own locations. Because cloud has hubs at different locations in all over the world.
Makes complete sense. And this is why I remind everyone is that when you are running an AI project, okay, it's no different once you've understood the skill sets to maintain your application, to maintain the data which are specific to AI. Everything that comes on after that is related to cloud and is related to how you manage general technology delivery. Now, one of the questions that a lot of people tend to ask is, well, what if I'm not building my own AI solution and I'm using something that's out there in the marketplace? Great, then you just pay your licensing fees per month and you're at the mercy of however they run their application. What we're talking about here is if you build your own environment. Remember, it just doesn't sit there and do what it's supposed to do. I say this repeatedly. Any AI application that you build is now a part of your organization chart. It's now a living, breathing entity within your environment. It needs a seat, it needs maintenance, it needs connectivity, which takes me to the third point. And this is the one that I'll close with. A lot of folks forget that connectivity is at the root of everything that we do in AI. In order to be connected, you can then only gather data from multiple points. A good example of this is the next version of the AI and Ajax series that we're going to be doing is with Collier Innovations, another small group of 20 to 25 people, and we're going to be talking about computer visioning technologies. Now, what Collier Innovations does is that they have a farm robot that goes into a particular agricultural farm and takes pictures of different areas and takes pictures of different crops and determines it for yield productivity, determines it for where there could be pests, determines for where there could be something that's not right, and an alteration needs to be made. In order to get that data from the robot to a data center, there has to be some level of connectivity. This is where 5G connectivity and 5G sensors could make a big difference. This is where remote connectivity could make a difference. But all of this comes at a cost. What is the total cost of connectivity has to be understood. Your applications have to be up and live at all times to get improved connectivity, to get redundancy onto your application, so on and so forth. There comes a cost with all of this. You have to factor that in. Connectivity costs can increase from anywhere to $30 a month extra to even $100 a month extra. And in some cases, if you're building a direct connection, then there's also the cost of actually building out that level of connectivity. One of the main features of AI applications is that it's instant. It does miraculous kind of like computations, but instantly. That's why connectivity factors in so very deep. Case in point, at any time that you're doing an AI project and you're building something from the ground up, you're probably looking at a monthly fee of anywhere what you need to have or estimate is, if you want it to be successful, anywhere between $7,000 to $12,000 a month is not unrealistic. Now, what are some tips? And we'll close with this in the next 2 minutes. What are some tips in terms of what you should be thinking about when it comes to how you should be planning an AI project for yourself? We talked about delivery. We talked about a little bit about execution. We talked a little bit about consulting. I want to talk a little bit about defining the project. Many of you have heard me say this, is that first define the problem, then go out and find the solution for it. But as Chandra will tell you, is that many of the things that we're looking to build in AI probably already exist somewhere. Okay, there are certain open source modulations that exist. There are certain applications that you can buy and license. Chandra, can you talk a little bit, and we'll close with this, about what do we mean by open source technologies that we can adopt?
There are certain open source technologies, and they developed and have given it to the community. So it is developed by a community, a group of developers, and they come up to solve a certain problem, and they will bring up this software and run. Big data is one of that kind of an open source platform that came up, and it was developed. So when you wanted to solve a certain problem, instead of writing all the code that by yourself, a lot of by yourself, so there are certain modules that are already developed and available. So you can plug in those modules, and then you can utilize those modules to develop your algorithms and all run your algorithms.
Yeah, and this is absolutely important that everybody understand this. When you're going out, find a right consulting partner, find a right academic partner. If you're going to work with the AI Hub, use that time, explain your problem, but also ask yourself, what else is out there in the marketplace that I could be using? You see, one of the mistakes that I find a lot of folks make, and that ultimately they have to drop a project because it's just financially unstable for them to run forward, is that if your work, your core operations is, for example, making fries, to take that early example, taking on an AI solution or building any technology solution from the ground up kind of makes you into a little bit of a tech company. And in order to do that, there are a lot of layers of things that you need to factor in terms of support. So sometimes think about what's already out there that you can use, and have a checklist of things that say this can be used or cannot be used. This is where a good academic partner can make the difference, or any consulting partner can make the difference. Those obviously come at a cost. The beauty about engaging with Durham College is that consultation, you can have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as many as you want, doesn't come at any cost for you. You use it, book our calendars, spend some time with us, get to that defined criteria. Typically, I run 5 things that I have in my checklist for any company that's looking at an AI solution. Number 1, in-house talent expertise. Number 2, experience with using any AI technologies in general. Many of us don't know it, but we're often interacting with AI. Number 3, the availability of data. Often people forget that data, you can collect it in different ways, but what if you need data and you don't have time to collect it? There are places you can go to buy data as well. Data World is a very good example as well. Those two come at a cost. Synthetic data, for example, in the cannabis industry, not a lot of data available. People go and buy data sets. It comes at a cost. Number 4, besides looking at data sets, etc., I always ask a team that if you're going to run an AI environment, what is the pilot test environment that you're going to be using? Because the bias and mistakes in AI are not unheard of. And number 5 is, what are you expecting in terms of a return from the AI project? Typically, if people are expecting, I'm going to see return on it right away, no, it takes time, and there's a maturity life cycle. And if that maturity life cycle and the finances that go with it are not applicable to your business, you take a step back. If it is, and you can go through the R&D process, brilliant. Again, I'll close with this and remind you, when it comes to AI, solutions that are out there, you license and you use. But in this case, specific to the AI Hub, if you're going to build from the ground up, there are a lot of advantages to it, but you need to keep in mind the financial cost to run something on your own. With that, I'll take a pause and ask Chandra if he has any closing comments to make.
Yeah, Ali. Like when building an AI project, it is very good to do an MVP and check whether you are solving the problem that you came up with, and then you scale it up to the production level. Because there is so much uncertainty in when it comes to AI, and there are a lot of issues. So first you need to define exactly what kind of a problem you are solving, and whether there is have you done any MVP to see if the AI is applicable and solving your problem, and then go ahead and productionalize it.
Fantastic. So I know that there might be, I saw one or two questions come in on Twitter. We'll respond to them directly. What I will say is that this session will be recorded. It will be shared and you can access it. The two things that I'll close with are as follows. If you want to have a discussion with us, you can reach out to me directly. You can tweet at us at the AI Hub. You can reach out to my colleague, Chris Gillis, but just by tweeting at us at the AI Hub, somebody will, we've got a pretty good supply chain in place. Somebody will then pick it up and make sure that they reach out to you. That's number one. Number two, spend a little bit of time, just a little, looking at various other AI institutions that exist. For example, you'll notice that at UFT, there's a Center for Data Analytics. Data analytics and AI go kind of hand in hand. Read what they're talking about. Look at how they're producing new ideas in AI, etc. And that will give you a good sense of if you want to produce something that doesn't exist into the market, you have to know the core components that go into making this and the core ingredients behind this. We can help you. Other institutions can help you as well. Read, reflect on what's out there. And at any point of time, if you're confused, reach out to us, not once, not twice, but an infinite number of times, and we'll be happy to have a discussion with you. Our next session on the AI and Ajax series will be on August 19th, I believe, on computer visioning, and we'll be talking about using facial recognition like technology to power your business. That one might be a little bit of a more technical discussion than this, but of course, if there are more questions, we'll be happy to field them. With that, the team at Ajax, I'll turn it over to you if you have any closing comments.
I'll just jump in to say, oh, sorry, Andrew, you can jump in too, but I just wanted to jump in and say thank you very much to Chandra and to Ali and of course Mauro for setting this up. It was a most informative session, and I truly enjoyed it and appreciate it. Thank you.
You're always welcome. We do enjoy these smaller groups where we can talk to the community and engage and build from there. So team at Ajax, thank you very much for coordinating. Everybody that joined us, we appreciate your time, and we'll be in touch however you choose to be.